Takes a lot of knitting to get this done. Finished object is so beautiful. I actually felt it a little bit. This little number, which is so cute. Hello, welcome back to my knitting podcast. My name is Juliette and I'm a knitter based in Cambridge. And welcome to my little corner of YouTube. If you're a returning viewer and you're thinking, where the hell has she been? I'm so sorry that it's been once again 3 months since my last knitting podcast. But that means that I do have a lot of projects to go through today. I have, I think, 6 finished objects to go through and 3 whips that are being actively worked on. Some of the works in progress that I mentioned last time, I haven't really made much progress on. So since the video is going to already have quite a lot of projects to go through, I won't go through those projects that I haven't necessarily worked on. So lots of exciting stuff, and let's just jump straight in. The first finished object is what I'm wearing today, and it's actually my Cumulus Tee, which I started 2 years ago, which is really embarrassing to say. I don't know how it took this long. Well, I know. It's because I just didn't really enjoy working with knitting for olive pure silk. That's why it took that long. And it's also 3mm needles, and it's also a t-shirt, so it takes a lot of knitting to get this done. And I think past me didn't quite know that, because when I bought this yarn with the intention of making this pattern, I was like, yeah, it'll go by. And I think since then I've discovered that I'm not really good at keeping track with projects that are on this small needles. If I don't feel the need to finish it quickly, I will really let it go. So that's kind of how I felt with this Cumulus Tee. I love the finished object. I think it looks so nice, but I think it's because it's not necessarily something that I'm missing in my wardrobe, a white v-neck t-shirt. I have a lot of white v-neck cotton t-shirts in my wardrobe. So I think I didn't feel as much of an excitement finishing this project because I'm very much a product knitter, by the way. I'm not a process knitter. I think that's what led to how it took this long to finish this. I won't go too much into details because I've spoken about this project since the start of my knitting channel. So yeah. This is the Cumulus Tee by Petite Knit, and I knitted this in Knitting for Olive Pure Silk in the color cream. So it's a really beautiful neutral white. There are different types of white, right? And I think the Knitting for Olive cream color is the most neutral one. Doesn't go yellow, doesn't go blue toned. I bought this in Beautiful Knitters, the first and only time that I ever visited that shop in Pimlico in London. At the time, I think I was feeling basically I'm at the beginning of my knitting journey, might as well stick to some basic colors so that whatever I end up finishing, I will wear. And now I slightly regret the decision of this cream because I kind of wished I had gone for something a bit funkier. Because right now, as I said, I don't really lack any white t-shirts in my wardrobe. So this feels a bit yeah, it's the same thing as whatever I have in my wardrobe, but just I knitted it, which does make it slightly special. The yarn itself, let's talk about it. I don't know if you can tell on camera, but my gauge changed over the course of the project. I think that my gauge was tighter back when I started this t-shirt. And then over time, it's kind of gotten looser. So the kind of body part where I've joined in the round, which is where I kind of paused this project, does look like a slightly looser gauge, but I don't think it's affecting the garment at all. It's just if you have a keen eye, a very keen eye, I think you might notice that. In terms of the yarn, I do love how it feels on my skin, and I do understand how everyone's obsessed with knitting for olive pure silk because of the beautiful qualities that it has, but it didn't really even out with blocking, which I swear I heard some other people mention that about KFO pure silk as well. I think pure silk has a tendency to be thick or thin a little bit, and it's not the most even thread. So I think that's why it leaves quite an uneven knitting kind of garment fabric. So yeah, that was an interesting observation. And any modifications I did to the pattern, I just removed the decreases that were included in the bottom of the body for the I-cord, applied I-cord bind off. I think that's because I saw a lot of projects on Ravelry mention that the decreases were not necessary because they kind of made the t-shirt cinch in a bit. So it creates a pucker right here, which is not the most flattering look. So I omitted the decreases and I'm glad I did. I also did the sleeves a bit shorter. So for my size, there's 4 decreases in the sleeve and I only did 3. So it's a quarter shorter basically. And I think this, honestly, I mean, I love the fit of this t-shirt. It's like a really good basic v-neck t-shirt. I was a little bit worried about how deep the v will end up becoming, but it's actually totally fine. And I think it's because also the applied I-cord helps kind of bring this V kind of a bit more together instead of it kind of falling off the t-shirt because of the pure silk kind of growing throughout the day. I did wear this t-shirt yesterday and I felt like it was really comfortable, and I'm not sure I'm gonna knit again with pure silk on its own on 3mm needles. You know, it's like never say never, right? But I do enjoy it a lot, and it did make all the effort and labor worth the finished object. Let's just leave it at that. The next finished object I want to talk about today is my blouse number 1 by My Favorite Things Knitwear. So this was featured in my last knitting podcast, and I had mentioned some issues I was having with how the kind of dye seemed to be having some white spots kind of throughout. I've decided, and also after seeing some comments about how purple dye is actually quite difficult to dye properly with, I've decided that these white bits were actually intentional because they kind of create a sparkly effect. This colorway is from my Yarn Unique, the hand dyer. It's, I believe, in the Gemstone collection. I think it's like meant to be an intentional kind of sparkling effect of it, as if it was a gemstone indeed. And honestly, the finished object is so beautiful. The hand dyeing is really gorgeous because it gives a lot more depth to the project as well. It's giving really witchy kind of autumn jumper slash top, long sleeve top. I did play a massive game of Yarn Chicken with this. Well, it's not really Yarn Chicken, is it, if you're aware that you're gonna run out of yarn. So what I did is basically I knit the body to a comfortable cropped length and then use whatever was left to do the sleeves. So what it means is that I don't have the last bits of increases on the sleeve to give that kind of slight bishop sleeve look. I think that's what it's called. Bishop or bell sleeve look that it has. You're supposed to have like a couple rounds of increases at the very end of the sleeve to have that shaped, and I omitted that because I had to like cast them off. It's a cropped long sleeve top with sleeves that come up to maybe like just before your wrist length, which is totally fine. Like I was expecting this with this yarn, and therefore like I'm happy with the finished product, and it's like everything doesn't seem like it's too short. It looks intentional, which I think is what I wanted. So yeah, I've worn it a couple times, although the weather quickly got too warm in the UK to be able to wear this, because this is quite a fitted top. It's got negative ease, so it's meant to be worn. I think rather I would wear it without anything underneath, unlike knitted jumpers where I will always probably have like a layer underneath a wool jumper. So because of that, yeah, it has to be kind of in the 16-17 degree range to be able to wear a long sleeve top like this. The yarn is a blend of merino, yak and silk, so it's got a beautiful drape and also nice warmth to it as well. And yeah, overall very, very pleased with this project, and I'm really excited to wear it in the fall because I think it will fit the vibe so well. I also have a black satin skirt that I really want to pair this with, and I think that would be like a really cute look with a pair of Doc Martens or something. Project that hasn't even been featured on the channel and has been started and completed since the last podcast episode is this white top by Knitting for Olive, or rather Pernille Larsen of Knitting for Olive. This is knitted in K-Faux cotton merino in the color Dusty Artichoke, and it's a bit of an interesting project because the pattern, the white top, is like something that I've really wanted to knit for a really long time. Ever since I purchased this cotton merino, purchased both of these around the same time 2 years ago. So this Dusty Artichoke cotton merino has been in my stash for a very long time, and so I was very happy to use it up to make this project. I actually used less than 2 balls of cotton merino, which is quite a surprise. It's a great economical project because like 1 ball of cotton merino is what, £8, £9? So yeah, I got a top out of like less than £16. However, when I tried it on, it did not have enough of a negative ease. And also I found that the cotton merino, when I wore it for the first time, just kept growing and growing and growing throughout the day. So I had to like constantly kind of hoist my top up so that my bra wouldn't show. And so I knew this was going to be a problem. And I was thinking I should have probably like sized down to the smaller size. I did the size S, and I think there's only size XS below that. So I knit this up and I wore it, and I had this issue with the cotton merino growing. Therefore I was like, okay, I'm gonna purposefully put it in a hot washing cycle to shrink it. And so this is the result of post shrinking. And now it actually fits perfectly. It's got 0 to a little bit of negative ease around my bust. And the straps became shorter as well, so I don't have the problem of my bra showing anymore. And yeah, I'm really happy with this shrinking job. It actually like felted a little bit, so you can sort of maybe tell. When I took it out of the wash, I was like, oh my goodness. I put it in a 40-degree normal tumble wash setting and not the delicate setting. So it had a lot more tumbling and more heat as well. I was like 70% cotton and 30% merino. I think it's going to be fine. But it ended up like felting the merino content in it for sure. And it was also like shredding a lot. So I have like this ball of like the shredded merino, probably the merino that's shredded, that I shaved after this dried. So yeah, I got a little fluff friend now. After the shaving, it looks like normal garment that's probably kind of been a bit worn, but it doesn't look felted. And I showed this to my knitting friend who was staying with me this weekend, and she was like, knitter to knitter, doesn't look felted. It looks like just a bit worn. So I'm glad of her feedback on that. And yeah, so I've been like wearing it quite a few times now since doing this felting / shrinking job, and it's been really successful, and it's such a cute top. It's such a classic top, and I think like knitted tops like this are quite on trend at the moment. So I'm really glad that I finished this in time for wearing it throughout the summer. And I think it's going to be like a lovely going out top, even in the winter season as well. Another finished object that was started after the last podcast episode and finished since then is this It's Not My Sweatshirt by, again, Pernille Larsen of Knitting for Olive. So this is kind of, basically is like the same as a Monday sweater or October sweater by Petite Knit. It's a very basic raglan construction. You start off with knitting the collar, and then you fold it, do some increases on the back to kind of like give a bit more volume to the back, as well as doing some short row shaping to bring the front of the neck down. And then you continue with your raglan increases. I realized I hadn't done like a basic raglan jumper in any of my knitting stuff. So this was a great palette cleanser, I suppose, like all stockinette, no thinking required. And I love this jumper already. I haven't even worn it yet because the weather's too warm for it, but I'm already so excited about wearing this lovely, lovely jumper. It's knitted in Sandnes Sunday in the color Above the Clouds. So it's the same color that I used for my mixed rib cami. And it's held with the Camel's Yarn Surrey Alpaca Lace in the color North Coast Coven. And I purchased this in the East Anglia Yarn Festival last year. So it's again a yarn, both yarns that have been in my stash for over a year now, that have been used up. So I'm really pleased with that. I'm glad I'm using up the stuff that's been like in my stash for a very long time. In terms of the pattern, apart from like the short row race shaping and the collar folding at the top, there's really not much more going on. It's a classic raglan jumper. I did find the instructions a bit unintuitive in the sense that we were discussing this with some of the people from Knit Night. Some patterns are just like, you can read through them and you see what's going to happen. And some of them you have to knit with them to finally understand what's going on. So that felt like the case here. A tip, for example, if you're going to do this jumper, is that the beginning of the round is actually the left back raglan like stitch marker, as well as being a beginning of round marker. And that's not written out in the pattern. You have to guess that yourself. Like, you obviously, if you follow the pattern without like even questioning it and you just follow the instructions as they are, you will understand eventually that the beginning of round matches one of the raglan increase spots. But I prefer things like that to be explained. I don't think it's an opinion that I only hold. I'm sure like even Petite Knit, who's quite known for having like quite concise pattern explanations, will still have a line to just explain what each stitch marker corresponds to. So I found that a bit lacking in Pernille Larsen's writing style. So I feel like that would be my only criticism of this pattern, really. But otherwise, very simple, very efficient. It's actually not meant to be this big. The pattern suggests like, I think 10-15 centimeters of positive ease, and I went for more like 30. I really wanted a super cozy jumper, and I had enough of the yarn to make like a big jumper, and I really wanted to use it up. My vision was a big cozy slouchy jumper, and I feel like I've definitely tick the mark with this one. It's also the yarn choice that makes it really lovely and drapey. I've already worked with Sun is Gone Sunday, held with like a lace weight yarn. I did that for the Mabel cardigan. I used the Sun is Gone Sunday in the color Perfect Purple, I think. And I really loved that look, so I was really expecting it to be the same for this, and I was absolutely right. It's like so lovely, held with a lace weight. And I used the Suri lace for the first time with this Camel's Yarn hand-dyed yarn, and it's so cozy. I really kind of get now why people are obsessed with Suri. I still need to try this on throughout the day to decide whether it's like softer than mohair, but it for sure feels very comparable, and yeah, it's definitely like a good substitute. It also gives a really lovely drape, I have to say. So I'm really excited to wear this in autumn as well. I'm basically like either knitting on summer projects at the moment or getting things ready for autumn winter this year. Let's mention some of the last few finished objects before I move on to works in progress. So this, I had it as a whip in my last podcast episode. These are just some vanilla DK socks. And yeah, they're done. that's all I really have to say. I did do some anatomical toe shaping. So I did make the slant much more prominent in these socks because I have quite like pointy feet. And I feel like that worked quite well. I haven't worn these yet because obviously the weather's too warm for DK weight socks. So I will report back on how good the anatomical shaping is. If you've watched my previous podcast episode, I did do a little bit of anatomical toe shaping for my other vanilla socks, which were fingering weight, and I wore those yesterday. It was actually a nice fit. I was quite pleased with how the anatomical toe shaping worked out, so I think I will do that in any future sock knitting. So these were my vanilla DK socks. The yarn, by the way, is the hand-dyed yarn called Emma's Yarn, and I purchased this from Yarnworks back when I was on their monthly subscription for this DK weight sock yarn. And then the last finished object is this one. Say hi to Chicken. I haven't given her a name yet, but it's my emotional support chicken. I can't remember the name of the person who wrote the pattern, so I will include it in the text here. But yeah, this is the very infamous or famous emotional support chicken pattern that I feel like if anyone's on Instagram or Ravelry, they'll know what I'm talking about. It's super cute. I love it. It's so cozy. It's kind of also the size of a real life chicken. And surprisingly, the one who's been enjoying this finished object the most is actually my partner. This chicken lives on our couch, and my partner is often like sitting there just like hugging the chicken, which is so cute. And it's because he grew up with chickens like in his garden in his family home, so I feel like he feels quite pleased with the fact that we have a stuffed chicken, and she's so cute. The yarn that I used is Drops Nepal. I took advantage of some of the Drops alpaca sale that they had, I think in May, to just buy a bunch of cheap Drops Nepal. So this wasn't like a stash buster or anything, so I did buy the yarn specifically to make this. I do have quite a bit of leftovers, so I don't know what I'm going to do with that. Maybe another chicken, a pal. I also had a slight idea of doing an emotional support chicken that I would leave in my department's PhD student's office room, because I feel like that would be really cute. There's already someone's crocheted penguin in there as like a stuffed toy, so I feel like the penguin needs his friend, so you could totally have an emotional support chicken. So yeah. Okay, now let's move on to works in progress. I'm gonna first show the works in progress that have not been featured in the previous podcast episode to keep it a bit more, exciting for you guys, and then I'll move on to the stuff that I have mentioned before. So my latest cast on is this little number, which is so cute. I put it on the hanger just to make it a bit more a bit easier to hold and to show, but this is my Ivy top by Petite Knit. It's one of her latest releases in like the range of Ivy like patterns. She always has like, at least lately, she's been doing releases with like names and then multiple versions of a pattern from that name. So for example, the Dagmar series or the Cloud series, like all of those came with like multiple patterns under those names. So the Ivy is the latest one, and they all feature this small shadow shoulder construction, which is actually really just the same technique as the technique for doing the April cardigan by Petite Knit as well, where you just do rapid increases around either side of this little square for the shoulder to shape your neck and shoulder. And so it includes first of all, a collar that you knit in the round. And then you do some shorter shapings, which you can sort of see here, as well as the increases for the shoulder shaping. And then you are no longer knitting in the round because you knit flat for both front and back separately until you do the armhole increases for either of them, and then you join them in the round again. So it's quite an interesting experience of doing in the round, flat, and then in the round again. But it is quite efficient, and I like that technique. So I feel like that's quite a good way that Petite Knit and her team have found to make this top quite interesting to knit on. And I'm planning to release like a project vlog of the process of knitting this top. So yeah, I think I'll give more details on how it is like in that video. But just to mention quickly that the yarn is Drop Spell. I have some right here. So Drop Spell is basically like the Drops dupe of Salis Garn Line. I hadn't used either of those in the past before. And currently Drops is having a sale of their summer yarn qualities. So I went on Wool Warehouse right around the time I finished my blouse number 1, because I was like, right, love this pattern. I think I'm gonna make another one. Saw someone who did it in red and I was like, I want that look. So I bought enough to make a blouse number 1. So I bought 8 balls. But then I saw the Ivy top, I think on Orsa Makes YouTube channel and Instagram, as well as like Petite Knit's promotional pictures. And I got really into it, as well as some of the pictures from the Sabai top, which I know has been around for a lot longer. The Sabai top is by Suzanne Mueller, and it's kind of like it's a more oversized version of the Ivy top, whereas the Ivy top has like 0 to negative ease. So after deciding which one to pick, I ended up picking the Ivy top over the Sabai. And so since I already had the bell in stash, I was like, okay, Drop Spell is not going to disappear. So I'm just going to make this top out of whatever I have that I had intended for the blouse number 1. And I used the rest for something else. Drop Spell is incredibly cheap, right? This top is already joined at the round, and I've barely started on the 3rd skein. I'm not even going to finish the skein before I finish this top, which I intend to make quite cropped. So this ends up being a project that costs like £6. Such a good deal. I'm very pleased so far. And also the color is beautiful. It shows up really well because there's a contrast between the white t-shirt and this red color. By the way, the color is number 12 Cherry. So yeah, it's going really well. It's going really fast. I started this 4 days ago and it's already this much done. And this is knitted on 4mm needles as well. So I think this is what I want to do. I'm no longer going to knit summer stuff on 3mm needles unless like I absolutely love the project. I think if I want to get some summer tops and stuff done, I need to like work on bigger gauges. So I'm very happy with this 4mm gauge. Super cute, super drapey as well. It feels really nice, the fabric, as I'm knitting it. I will report back when it's finished and probably in the next podcast episode and how it wears in the hot weather. Pretty confident in how it's going so far. And if it goes really well, I can still take advantage of the drop sale that is going on until another week and a bit. I might buy more yarn to make this same top in different colors. I'm the type of person that if they like something, they'll buy the same thing in different colors in like stores, but also just like everything else in life. The next work in progress are these simple ribbed socks. I am technically following a pattern, but only very loosely just to get how they are spreading like the ribbing on the sock. I'll leave the name of the pattern and the person who wrote it, but yeah, it's a free pattern online and I just followed it roughly to get the ribbing ratio. So this is a 3x1 rib. These socks are actually for my partner's birthday. His birthday was 2 weeks ago. You might notice a bit of a pattern in this channel where I have a really hard time sticking with birthday present schedules. Anyway, my partner's birthday was on July 9th. He requested a pair of socks when we bought this yarn from the East Anglia Yarn Festival. So people who've watched my East Anglia Yarn Festival haul might recognize this. It's from the Camel's Yarn. It's the Blue Face Leicester sock quality and it's in the color by Salt and Sea. It's a lovely grey with like a few speckles of black, grey and a bit of orange as well, orange / brown if you could see it on camera. So it's like a really lovely yarn, very loosely following the pattern just for like the ribbing ratio, but otherwise I did a classic. I have the partridge heel, which I've been doing for all of my socks lately. I did make it a bit longer because obviously this is for a man's foot, so he has like a longer instep, so I made sure to like account for that by doing a longer heel flap. I'm already quite close to the point where I have to start doing the decreases for the toes, and this is always the bit that surprises me when I'm knitting socks. You don't actually have to spend that much time knitting the foot before you already start doing the decreases for the toes. It takes less time than you'd think it would, because oftentimes when I get to the foot bit, I get quite discouraged because I'm like, oh, I have to like knit a whole tube now. But actually no, like the toe decreases come in quite quickly before you even realize, so it really doesn't take that much time. I'm knitting this on 2.25mm needles, as I do for any socks really that I knit. I find that works really well because it gives a tight enough gauge that the sock doesn't feel loose or anything. I think my partner is not really in a rush to have these gifted to him because the weather's too warm for it anyway. He's told me that he's totally fine with the fact that these socks will probably only be done around autumn, just around the time he might want to start wearing them. I'm not working on this as if I had like a really hard deadline, which I've already missed, by the way. So I bring this with me whenever I travel, whenever I had to take the train and so on. But otherwise, whenever I'm at home or at midnight, I don't necessarily bring this project. It will get done hopefully before September or October. He's really not the type of person that puts pressure on these sort of things. None of the friends who I've gifted knitted stuff are, but like with him specifically, there's no need to have this finished before the weather gets colder. Moving on to the last section of today's podcast episode is updates on whips that you've seen in the past. Here's an update on my porcelain jumper, my porcelain sweater. Last time in the last podcast episode, I think I had just finished the second color work. Now I'm happy to report that I finished the third. Literally just finished it, like this is the last round of the color work, and so now I have to do is a bit of stockinette before I move on to the ribbing of the body. I think when I finish the body, I'll do a mid-project block again, just to see where I'm at in terms of the width of the specifically the shoulder area, so I can adjust my sleeve length accordingly. I found it quite useful when I did the mid-project block when I finished the body on my Moby sweater, which I will mention next, because that did help actually like kind of see like where I'm sitting at and how to adjust the sleeve length as well. It's not my priority at the moment, this jumper. It's quite hot to work on because obviously it's like Tinpyrgin, which is Norwegian wool held with mohair, Filcolana tilia. It's really warm to work with. It hasn't been my priority knit because I'm kind of trying to prioritize the summer knits so I can still wear them for the rest of July and August, September. I will try to get back to it as much as I can because I really do want to get to wear this for autumn winter this year. I feel like, again, it's a knit that will look so lovely when the weather gets colder. I feel like I quite like the idea of having jumpers ready to wear for the colder season, but also there's a certain joy in knitting these sorts of projects when the weather is cold as well. So we'll see. But September is going to mark the 1 year anniversary of this project. So there's also a part of me that's like, I really should get this finished sooner. Something that I've realized lately is that I feel like I'm putting a lot of pressure on myself to finish certain projects just because, you know, I feel like I've exposed myself on my social media, either YouTube or Instagram, about the fact that it's taken me quite a long time and it's still taking me quite a long time to finish. But it's like a made up pressure, right? No one's actually saying I have to finish these things. And like I can also just totally listen to my own intuition of, oh, you know what will make me happy? Knitting on a red top because I can finish this in a week and like wear it next week. I feel like that's totally fair, and I feel like I'm putting unjustified pressure on myself to finish certain things. So yeah, I've decided to like not be too fussed about finishing things because I feel like I have to. I do want to finish this because I do love the idea of wearing this. But if I do pass the 1 year mark, I'm gonna be like, okay, it is what it is. And I'll try my best, obviously, to finish these projects, but there's no deadline. I set the deadlines and I decided there won't be any deadline. I feel like that kind of helps other people as well, because I feel like on knitting social media, there's a lot of people finishing projects one after the other, one after the other. And it's true that today's video also features a lot of finished objects as well, so I'm part of it, that kind of phenomenon as well. But I hope you understand that this is like 3 months worth of knitting. Again, some of these projects had actually been languishing for, 2 years before I finished them. So like I hope that kind of puts away any pressure on some other people as well who might be feeling the same way I am right now. And then last but not least, this is the progress I got on my Moby sweater. Last podcast episode, I had finished and blocked the body. And I was reporting about how very happy I was with this project so far. Since then, didn't really pick it up as much, but I recently kind of got a bit of motivation. Until I got started on that red ivy top, I was working quite a lot on this. And so I made a good amount of progress on the first sleeve, the right one. I have to say, I did struggle a bit with meeting the number of stitches that you're supposed to pick up from the armhole. I think I can safely say this without doxing the pattern. I'm supposed to pick up 86 stitches, and I picked up 96 using the stitch pickup rate that the pattern suggests. Realistically, I was like, does that actually change anything? Because the pickup rate is like the usual, at least for my size, I picked 2 stitches for every 3 rows. That's kind of the usual pickup rate that I do for picking up stitches for sleeves. So it wasn't gonna affect how the sleeved looked. And so I was like, I think I'd rather have a number of stitches that naturally happens from this pickup rate rather than sticking to the stitch count that the pattern suggests and risk having the armhole kind of cinch in a bit unnecessarily. So what I did instead was that I placed the beginning of the round here, obviously, and then I took note of the number of stitches that I picked up from the back yoke and then the ones I picked up from the front yoke, which is obviously a bit longer to account for the dropped shoulder. I'll make sure to match that on the other sleeve, but I will match that higher number of stitches as well. And then the way I placed the beginning of the pattern repeat, like the cable repeat here, is that I just kind of laid my project flat. I made sure to pick up like the top of the sleeve, the top of the shoulder really. Made sure that there wasn't the same number of stitches on either side from the beginning of the round, and that marks the top of the sleeve, right? Basically keeping everything symmetrical to have the cable run along the top here. This is where I think it's quite important to be flexible with your patterns, because I think stick it to it blindly sometimes is not good. So you've got to kind of take a step back, look at the bigger picture, which is in this case, you're making sure that the cable's at the top of your sleeve. So I think it's more important to focus on that and have a well-fitted sleeve rather than kind of like stick to the stitch count that the pattern proposes, because it might just be a difference in row gauge that's causing this. Yeah, if you're able to kind of step back from the pattern like this and do something that seems more sensible to you, the way your garment is looking at the moment, I think you're more likely to set yourself up for success in terms of the fit at the end of your knitted project. It's going pretty fast. I've also adjusted the number of decreases because obviously I have more stitches than the pattern recommends for the sleeve. So like my sleeve is a bit wider, so therefore I'm doing more decreases at a faster rate than what the pattern recommends. I think the pattern was recommending every 9 or 10 stitches that you do a decrease. I'm doing every 8. That's really the only difference. It's looking quite good right now. Again, not the top priority at the moment, but the way like this sleeve, which already has like half of the decreases, only took like 2 days to do. I feel like this could go quite fast. So I could potentially have this finished before the temperature gets cold again. So I will have another jumper ready for autumn winter, which will be quite nice. I pick this up whenever I'm craving something a bit more difficult, basically. This I find a bit easier to work on in this warm weather than the porcelain sweater with the fluffy mohair. That's what I've been picking whenever I feel like working on something woolly or something a bit more complicated with the cable repeats. If I'm looking for like a quick unwinding knit, I'm usually picking up my stockinette ivy top at the moment. And then if I'm traveling, I pick up the socks that I'm making for my partner. I think someone mentioned this in their knitting podcast. I can't remember exactly which one it was, but that's the system that works for them. A travel knit, a mindless stockinette knit, and then a complicated knit. And I think that's kind of what's happening in my current rotation of works in progress as well. So I don't know how long this video ended up being, because I was worried that because I had a lot of things to go through, it would take a long time. So maybe like I talked really fast and I skipped a few details. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this podcast episode. I'm really sorry that again, it took like yet another 3 months gap until I got this podcast episode out. I told myself that I will really try to get at least one podcast episode a month out. And I've also been kind of playing around with different formats, specifically like project vlogs. If you haven't seen it, you can check out my latest project vlog of the April cardigan that I gifted for one of my best friends. So that's like the different format that I've been playing with. As I mentioned, I'm trying to also film a project vlog for this top. I think it will be quite like seasonally appropriate because it's a fast project that's perfect for the summer. I'll try to stick to a better podcast filming schedule, but in the meantime, thank you for your patience and I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, make sure you give this channel a subscribe and give this video a like, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!